as everyone knows, there's a lot of work that goes outside of those windows. We're really trying to focus on that time, the time that we're here. Basically, what you would do is you would do a time audit, you would evaluate it, you'd see a lot of wasted time, you'd eliminate those immediately, and then you'd try and group tasks together that are oriented, that keep you in the same train of thought.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we've got a phenomenal interview ahead of us, but before we do, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we've got shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space. Other days we cover trending topics, items that recruiters are talking about or will be very soon and what those mean for them. Drop by every Tuesday. We have a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Sometimes we open it up for Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions that they'd like to hear us take on, so send those to us at podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally you'll hear a mic drop episode from Matt where he joins to share something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. All right, today, interview. We'll definitely live up to it. So, to tee it up, you've got your notebook to-do list. You've got your sticky notes all over your desk. You have probably 12 overdue reminders in your phone. You have time blocked on your calendar for things like candidate outreach, sourcing, biz dev, you name it. You even signed up for a project management tool like Basecamp or Asana. But come the end of the day, we seem to have only ever made like a small dent in what we set out to do. So we all have our own methods and tricks to try to be better at managing our time and our work days, but very few of us feel like we've ever got that perfect combination of mindset and tools to make the most of it. And so that's why I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Justin Bellante, co-founder and CEO of Titan Placement Group. So he claims he has cracked the code on time management so that he and his team can make the most of every day. So with that, let's get into the conversation with Justin. Welcome.
Wow. Hello, Sam. Crack the code, eh? I found some things that work for me, and hopefully they can shed some light on what might work for you too.
Yeah. So, and this is one thing I love because it's not just recruiters, it's everyone that feels this. But I know there's so many things, especially when you're a full desk recruiter starting a new company like yourself. It's like, what do I focus on? How do I organize my time and really prioritize? So this has been something that you've been a little bit more vocal about recently, which I'm excited to hear. So it's like we all have our ways of trying to define like and manage our days well, but often like just wish I had a few more hours in the day, or I wish I could just go back and tweak the order that I did things to try to do that. So tell me a little bit about like the aha moment, so to speak, when this really became such a big emphasis for you.
Well, I think it was, really when I started to get into business development and account managing. I'd say like midway in my career. The first few years were just trying to figure out how to, screen candidates and learn about healthcare. And then I realized that the one with the most and the best accounts wins, basically. So I had to start doing some account managing, business development, and then you become a glorified plate splinter. And I started dropping plates, left and right. Just kind of took on more than I think that I was capable of at that time because I wasn't using any of the tools that we can, and just kind of trying to do as much as I can. Kind of a wing it mentality, if you will. Made some hires, had some clients that really enjoyed working with me and some that didn't hear from me very often because I had no process in play. And that's really when it started to become like critical. One of my mentors sat with me and was like, well, let's do a time audit. And that's kind of, I think, where it all started.
Interesting. Yeah, I know too many of us can relate to that. It's like we think sticky notes will be the quick answer, just like a to-do list. But when you go beyond the entry level job where it's honestly you're just like do the same thing over and over and over. I remember making like 70 dials a day. Well, all I have to do is make dials. I'll just go down that list. I don't really have to think about it other than, okay, I need to go faster to hit my quota. But when you do start to layer in account management, trying to do sourcing, try to screen, and also task shifting, that mentally takes a lot of your time out to really get into it. So I bet this time audit was pretty insightful for you. So first off, just like explain it like I'm five, the quick, like just how do you define a time audit? And then what did you do with that? What were the insights? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So it came around the same time that I was doing like a financial audit for my own personal life. And kind of they're they can go hand in hand, basically. And the way it was explained to me is that for a period of time, you select what that time is. It could be, a week, could be a month. For me, it was a month. And you write down essentially every task that you're doing in real time, with the time that you're doing the task. And then you evaluate that after a period of time, and you can immediately see. I'm a visual person. You could see where you're wasting time, where you should be a little bit more focused on one specific task at a time instead of jumping back and forth, if that makes sense, because you lose concentration and it takes a lot of time to get concentrated again. So I think kind of
Mm-hmm.
just going through every single thing that you do, from sourcing candidates to high-fiving somebody and talking about their deal that they just had, for 17 minutes. um, Evaluating all of that, and then you can see how you can flip that around, eliminate things, make adjustments, and go from there. I don't need 17 Hulu subscriptions, so something along those lines. You can remove a few, plug and play, and go from there.
So what were a few of those blocks that you found you were spending a little bit more time on than you realized?
Couple areas. I think business development, I spent a lot of time in the discovery.
Mm-hmm.
It's been probably a lot of my time. We call it the black hole, if you will. Uh, trying to identify, clients that I want to get, and then spending 3 hours of research, making sure I identify who the right people are, name gathering, contact gathering, connecting with them on LinkedIn, finally get a hold of the right person. And they don't work with recruiters, but they're like one of those that really doesn't work with recruiters. And then I lost 3.5 hours of time. And I think like stuff like that was really like impactful when you see like you spent so much time on something that you're getting nothing from. You can
Mm-hmm.
really mitigate that and spend, find ways to spend less time getting the same information you need, so you can just go ahead and find out sooner than later that they don't work with recruiters.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things when I was in those days was coming up with a list of just like what are the essential things that you need to know. Grant, you're still doing your research. Like absolutely do your research, not just go blindly into an account and hope that you'll land them with some pitch. But it's like, a couple fun facts about them. Who are the decision makers? What's their business focused on? Different priorities that you think would be important to them. But again, it's like, do you need 3.5 hours for that, or can you probably do it in a half hour, 45 minutes, and then get through some more of
Mm.
those? So I like that you called that out, and then you mentioned all of the different TV subscriptions and everything. So was that another that you're finding? Was it like leisure time, or let's talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the people that I work with, and I'm very much people oriented. Like I like get energy from other folks, so I very
Hmm.
well can find myself, 35-minute conversations. That adds up, and over
Hmm.
time, it's like it's not only just the 5-minute conversation about what I did over the weekend, but it's you distract yourself, and it takes 10 or 15 minutes to get refocused. So then it's actually 20 minutes that you've wasted. And at the end of the day, I love my team. I love the people I work with, but like I'm here to work. And
Hmm.
the less time I spend working, the less, free time I have, and the less income I have to support my family.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's those water cooler conversations. It's like, yeah, you want to create the goodwill with the team, but you do quickly realize what started as a 5-minute chat about, the football game last Sunday or something turns into a 30-minute. Oh, that was 30 minutes, and now I have to get to it and catch up on what I just missed there. So let's start going a little bit deeper. So you did the time audit. You were finding all these areas. You've got a handful of different, I'll call them little, I don't know, tips, tools, practices that you started doing to try to make the most of your time. So talk me through some of those. I mean, I know you mentioned before the call, it's like you mentioned power hours, keeping track, hour by hours, do the math. Like, let's go through some of these, whichever you wanna cover
Yeah.
first.
So I love to start with the time audit, because you have to know where your time is being spent so you can allocate that time appropriately. So you start with that. And then what we'll do is iron out like half an hour increments of your whole entire day, starting from the time that you get here to the time that you leave. And then, as everyone knows, there's a lot of work that goes outside of those windows, but we really try to focus on that time, the time that we're here. Basically, what you would do is you would do a time audit, you would evaluate it, you'd see a lot of wasted time, you'd eliminate those immediately, and then you'd try and group tasks together that are oriented. like that keep you in the same train of thought and the same mentality. Like you said, from task hopping, you don't want to, make a business development call and then do a prep call for a candidate and then source 15 candidates and then screen a few and then you have another BD call. My brain doesn't work like that. I need to structure it to where like, so, for us, we get here at 8 o'clock, do a lot of our automated recruiting, if you will, a lot of alerts, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get the ball rolling. 8:30 meeting, usually out of here by 8:45. 8:45 to 9 is like prep for our BD time. 9 to 11 is BD time. And I think there's a lot of power to in having the whole team do the same thing at the same time because it's a lot of continuity. I'm hearing people say the same things at the same time. I think that makes a lot more beneficial because if they're having a conversation that I'm going to have on the next call, I can hear what they're saying that helps them break that barrier or overcome that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, like I think having that structure too makes a huge difference. And then we switch it at 11 o'clock to noon. We start doing like our recruiting follow-ups, lunch break, 1 o'clock meeting, usually out of here about 1:15. And then it's essentially recruiting time for the rest of the day. But we try and do like power hours where we'll do like for an hour, 60 minutes. Let's put our blinders on, let's focus, let's stick to one task. Let's try to keep side conversations to a minimum. I think having that time to focus makes a big difference too. And then you can
Mm-hmm.
not spend too much time on one task. There's like the law of diminishing returns. There's only so much time and energy and things that you can do on one task at one time before it starts to like hinder your performance. So I'll do like a power hour and then we'll switch a job. Power hour,
Mm-hmm.
switch a job, find a couple candidates, power hour, and then basically the day's gone. But that's been one of the ways we've been able to kind of structure our day, kind of taking the things that we want to do, grouping the things that are parallel and together, and then not spending too much time on one task.
I'm getting different thoughts here. I always like, you're going to see me keep looking down. It's because I take notes as we go through this because there's so many different things I want to get into with you. So the first one is because what I also like to do is like, this is all incredibly valuable to teach. It's like, not just like, you should be doing time blocking. Like, what's that look like? You should do power hours. What's that look like? So I also like to think about why might people not do some of these things or what are some opposite takes that they would look into. So the first one that comes to mind is, you talk about there's a lot of power and having continuity, like everyone doing business development at the same time from 9 to 11 a.m. Is this something that you found with your team? Because I know with my team, one of the things is like, granted, we have creatives and others where they're like, I do my best work at 8 p.m. And so sometimes people are wired different ways where it's like they might not be fully turned on yet, so to speak. They're not firing on all cylinders, or even business development, so to speak. You could have CEOs, I know people say like call them before the secretary gets in or wait until the like 4:45 time. What's led you to choose those times, and how do you like, are you flexible at all with that, or I'm just curious like how that's worked with the
No,
team?
and that's fair. I mean, we are flexible. We
Okay.
kind of just our thought process has been very similar to like T-ball versus baseball. Like our thought
Mm-hmm.
process is like, hey, here's the ball. We're all going to go hit balls right there on the tee together as a team. So that way, when you get to the real major leagues and a fastball comes through, you know how to hit it. If that makes sense. So we don't mandate that anyone does anything. We
Mm-hmm.
just strongly encourage, and I think that not mandating it, I think, makes a huge difference. I think people
Mm-hmm.
like to do things like socially, like in groups. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes people want to do, after hour stuff at a different time because they have certain calls lined up, and that's perfectly okay. I think we just kind of like show people how to do it the way that's worked for us. And instead of telling you like you must do it this way, kind of giving them the freedom, and autonomy to do it the way that they see fit with our still carrying on our same mission, tonality,
Mm-hmm.
message, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So it's giving them the framework and saying,
Mm.
you can adapt to it. Obviously, there's going to be times when you need to, do a one-off or whatever else. But when you see, as you said, the power of the collective group doing everything at the same time, and you can kind of train them, it's like the time blocking in itself to keep them from task switching keeps them more efficient, even if that's not their most optimal time
Mm.
to do like that specific thing. Okay,
That's it.
I like that.
Yeah, heck yeah.
All right, so you told me a little bit about the power hours. Tell me about some of the other different tricks that you've used.
Whew. Shoot. I mean, like evaluating the time that you're at work too, I think is really
Mm-hmm.
important. It might seem like we're all working a solid 40-hour 9 to 5. Sometimes maybe more, sometimes maybe less. But like if you're doing a meeting in the morning every day and you're doing a meeting in the afternoon every day and you're breaking for an hour for lunch and you're leaving every Friday 3 hours early just because it's Friday, like all those little things like really do add up. So it turns out that 40-hour work week is like 27 hours worth of work. And like
Mm-hmm.
we need to figure out how to maximize our time because, those 5-minute conversations and you have 27 hours, like every second counts. So, yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does because it's like, yeah, you might be in the seat for 40 hours, so to speak, or commuting. It counts as your 40 hours during the week, but when you do get into it, those water cooler conversations, like you've said, task switching, it's not quite the same. So, what are some different ways? Because it sounds like you've got a really good structured schedule here. So, when you get into, working with certain candidates, working on certain jobs, business development, do you use any like do you have a notebook? Do you all use a project management tool? Do you work out of your CRM? What are some of the different ways that help you work like more intelligently with that so you're not just starting from scratch on everything?
Yes. So we do a little bit of everything. I'd say, I do have to-do lists. I read it in, I think it was Atomic Habits, James Clear's
Mhm.
book about, with to-do lists, about like the first thing you do before you do anything else. And you try and do it from memory because if you can't remember it, it's probably not that important. So the first thing I do every single day when I get to work, I have my little planner and I write I write my goals for the day, write my goals as if I had completed them already. So today I uncovered 5 stellar candidates and submitted to X client. I connected with 10 hiring managers, had a positive conversation with 3. Um, one of them signed an agreement that day, kind of like manifestation, if you will.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then go into my to-do list for the day of like, okay, so I know like there's a couple things that I've been trying to get a hold of or people have been trying to get a hold of, evaluate that just from memory, those things. Kind of having like an operator mindset though too, like I'm not leaving until I accomplish these tasks. And I think doing it from memory and knowing that I'm not leaving until I accomplish these tasks, I'm not putting 30 tasks on there. It's just not going to happen.
Mhm.
Um, Try and be a little bit more specific with the times that you book appointments too. I used to be like, I'll do anything for anybody at any time, and I quickly realized that you need to have boundaries. So like I
Mhm.
don't try not to take any meetings earlier than 9 o'clock, and I try not to take any meetings after 4 p.m. because I think it is about balance too. As much as I like love and hate to say that, like I feel like you have to have a water cooler conversation every once in a while, or else you feel like a robot, in the cog. I've been at those
Mhm.
positions, but I think we've done a really good job to it, just kind of like leading by example with our own time. Like I've worked for organizations where they're like, "This is how you manage your time," and then you turn around and their feet are on their desk and they're, on Instagram, and you're like, "Okay." Um, but I think having that example, has definitely been huge for us as well.
Mhm. So I know one of the blessing and the curse of routine, right, is it forms habits and everything else, and the hardest part is often just the discipline of sticking to it while it's becoming a habit. So anything that you learned or experienced while you're going through that, because again, maybe it's like you don't enjoy biz dev early in the morning, or sometimes it's 3 p.m. You need a cup of coffee. You're not feeling it halfway through the power hour. Anything that you've done to just try to figure out, like, okay, how do I keep pushing, or anything there until it just does truly become routine for you?
Yeah, I think, consistency I think is important for sure, right? I think
Mhm.
getting your reps in, because on your the first time you lift the bar is going to be a lot different than the 1,000th time you lift it up, right? It's just going to feel lighter and feel a little easier. I think as much as old school as it is, I think scripts too definitely help. I think it kind of saves your brain power
Mhm.
for the times that you have to make real decisions on the fly. So, like consistency, scripts, so you don't have to use too much energy, and then variety too. I mean, variety is a spice of life. Like, although sometimes we do 9 to 11, every once in a while we might do like a 1 to 3 o'clock just to kind of switch it up. And then also I think too, like we implore everyone to work in fields and areas. We're in healthcare only, but
Mm-hmm.
fields and areas they have an affinity for or passion for. And I think that having a strong why makes the
Mm-hmm.
how so much easier. Like for me, like I'm really passionate about community-based nonprofits, right? Like I grew up in the underserved community myself, and I know what it's like to need care and not be able to get it, right? And I could only imagine if I needed that care, found the facility, but there was no one to like take care of me. So I'm really, really passionate about finding providers who can go in there and see people like me. Um, so that fires me up. So that's why I'm like, I could do that every day for the rest of my life because like I'm extremely passionate about it. If you're just like, well, this is what I told you to do, now do this, you might be excited about the potential for income, career development, advancement, but by the thousandth call, you're not that excited anymore.
I'm totally going to segue here, and I
Yeah,
know
you're
this is kind of
good.
deviating from time commitment, but it's a recruiting podcast at
Sure.
the end of the day. When you're hiring for your organization or jobs you're working, do you vet a little bit for like how do you find those people that do have that motivation, passion for whether it's like who you all are serving at your company or for that hiring organization and who they work with?
Absolutely. When we first started, we were like, we can teach this job to anybody. Like if I could learn it, they can learn it too. Not a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. They don't have to know anything about healthcare. They don't have to know anything about recruiting. And we quickly learned that doesn't always work. It doesn't always transfer very well, that there are certain things that, you should be recruiting for. And it was really kind of an aha moment 6 months in to be like, what might be a good idea? Why don't we apply our skill set recruiting to hiring people for our team? What a revelation that was.
Yeah.
Um, and then realized like, we did one-on-one interviews for a while. That was nice. But then I feel like we started doing peer interviews, which I think helped a lot too, because the three of us have a similar vision, but we all do things just a little bit differently, and we're all looking for something just a little bit different. And I think the three of us, Gary, Pete, and I, getting together in a room, like we can really suss somebody out. So we try and identify, who they are, what they do, what fires them, up, what makes them tick, what they're looking for, what they're not looking for, and kind of really dig into them just like I would with a candidate, and find their intrinsic motivators, see if it aligns with our mission, our values, what we're looking to do, if they're the kind of person that we would want to work with, you know, do they have essentially what it takes to do the job as best we can? And all of those things combined, I think, has really helped us. We kind of like have a mentality of like we are constantly adapting, growing, and changing, and we're totally okay with not doing it the way we've always done it, if that makes sense. So I think that's
Yeah. Oh
helped
yeah.
tremendously for sure.
Yeah, and I love the way you phrased it for what motivates them intrinsically because external motivation is going to fade fast.
Mm.
But when you do want to commit to like routine and have all that, the people that are intrinsically motivated and that's aligned with how you also are, how your organization is, it's going to make it that much easier to really stick to all this. Someone wants to start doing this, but they are scared or they're a few months in, they're not quite sure like is this working? Are there any types of indicators that you look at to say like am I on the right track with this? Is it doing what I was hoping it would do or do I need to course correct a little bit?
Mm. Well, I feel like you can see it rather quickly. Once
Mhm.
you've spent a month or a week auditing your time, I feel like we are our own worst critics. I mean, you could tell right away, like, oh, I'm spending 3 hours a week in discovery for clients that I'll never get to work with, or I'm spending
Mhm.
5 hours a month talking about my weekend, like maybe I could spend an hour, because I still want to talk about my weekend. I like the people I work with. I don't get a chance to talk to them that often. So, occasionally I might want to chat about taking my son to Disney World or something. But you could see rather quickly, I think, and if you, I mean, it builds self confidence and self esteem just to follow and stick to a plan all and by itself. Um,
Mhm.
whether you're working out, whether you're reading a book, whether you've got a plan, if you stick to it, man, like even if you miss a few days, like at the end of the month, like you're gonna be light years ahead. I feel like it almost seems like a silly question because it's like, well, yeah, anyone who does it will just see it work.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like exercise. It's like everybody's on a diet and everybody wants to exercise, but the people who do
Mhm.
it are the ones that see the results. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like things get easier. You just notice it. You're getting through tasks quicker. You're accomplishing more in the less amount of time often, or doing more with the exact amount of time you're doing before. And that's one thing that I think people automatically assume, grind culture. Well, I now got 3 hours back. That's 3 more hours to the workday. Well, if you're already hitting your goals, it's like, well, maybe it's an hour extra to the workday, and then I go spend an extra time with my family. I go on that trip to Disney World. There's different ways where you can do that, because also if you re-energize yourself on if it's your physical health, your mental health, other ways, that keeps you from burning out, keeps you sharp, keeps you going. So yeah, I think it's good when you really look at all that holistically for how you can repurpose that time gained, or the extra time that you weren't using before properly.
Right. Well, I'm transitioning in life right now from being a 60, 70-hour worker bee to a father and a manager, owner of a business. So like I'm trying to figure out how I can work less and be twice as productive. So like this is all I've been trying to work on for the last like year and a half, and I feel like I still have a lot to go, but I feel like we've made huge strides, and I'm really excited to see what 2024 looks like too, and how much more like I can squeeze my time so I can spend more time with my family and be a little bit more intentional, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to have you back on in a year to
Oh,
see
heck
if you've
yeah.
gotten that time back, and how it's all doing. So, as we wrap, any final words of wisdom or parting advice?
Keep your chin up. I think it's important that to know like a lot of us know what we should do, right?
Mhm.
And not everybody does what they should do. They may call me just in time, right? However, like I'm not always doing this 100% of the time. I'm doing it 90% of the time. But like it's like if you plan to go to the gym 5 days a week and you go 4 days for a year, like
Mhm.
that's 4 times more than zero. Like you're going to be light years ahead. So like if you skip a day or you miss a day or you make a plan or make a commitment and you don't honor it, like that is okay. We're human beings. We're flawed creatures. Let's go ahead and just regroup, keep your chin up, get back to the plan and get at it.
I love it. Yeah, it's not binary. It's not like once you mess up once, it's done.
Mm,
It's the habits, like you said at the end of the time. If you're 80 to 90% of the time you're doing the right thing, you are going to be light years ahead of where you would have been otherwise.
that's it.
So, well, this was great. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the show and sharing this knowledge. I know, I mean, I've got a half page of notes already just from this
My pleasure.
conversation. So, yeah, it's inspired me. Hopefully, it inspires some other recruiters as well to really start incorporating this into their day to day moving forward. So, as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. You can find the show notes from this conversation in your favorite podcast streaming platform. Full video episode is also available on YouTube if you want to check out our beautiful faces as we had this conversation. And if you have specific questions, looking for advice, send us an email to podcast@loxo.co. I'm on LinkedIn. Justin's on LinkedIn. We will gladly accept anything that you want to share. But overall, that was another incredible interview. Justin, thanks again for joining us.
Hey,
Until next time.
my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on. Have a great day. I'll see you in a year.
Perfect.
All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.